Hello, everybody. If you're watching right now, please bear with me. I'm just trying to set up my stream. Hello, everybody. If you're watching right now, please bear with me. I'm just trying to set up my stream. Hopefully, this will work. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, this will work. We'll see how it goes. Thank you for bearing with me. Again, just trying to set this up. Thank you for bearing with me. Again, just trying to set this up. All right, everybody. I think I'm going to start a little early. Sorry, Carla. I hope I'm not stepping on your toes. If I am, I apologize for that. I just didn't want to have too many technical difficulties before I start. So I have my screen. I'm up on Twitch. I am currently also on Facebook. So anybody joining on Twitch, thank you. Anybody joining on Facebook, thank you. What is on screen currently is a original blank sketch cover that I've been working on. I usually like to work fast, but this cover is not allowing for that. I usually like to work fast, but this cover is not allowing for that. Hey Ryan, how's it going? Thank you very much for joining. Hey Ryan, how's it going? Thank you very much for joining. Oh, well, you're very welcome. I really enjoyed popping in to your AMA. I felt like I really learned something new. I think that's part of the joy of going to panels at comic book conventions, and it's something I really miss. Popping in to your AMA. You know, with the whole quarantine situation, it's kind of hard. This is supposed to be my busiest year in terms of conventions. Usually I only do West Coast conventions, but this year I was looking and hoping to expand, and I was scheduled for 7 conventions officially. And I actually had never heard about your project before, and I can't wait to pick it up and meet you in person. Yes, this is a live art session. I'm just getting started here. Hopefully, more people join. I want to do something a little special out there. I announced it on Twitter. I don't know how many people will pop in, but whoever pops in, what I'm going to do is conventions are really special for me. I've learned a lot and built up my career a lot by attending them. And as many of you know and are affected by it, we're not going to have a lot of opportunities this year to go to conventions. But one of the most special things about going to a convention for me is to see artists work. And I think one of the most fun things when you go see an artist's work is that you can also not only learn what they do or see what they do in person, pick up some new skills hopefully, but also get free art. I've been lucky enough to get free art from Jim Lee. I've been lucky enough to be on stage with Jim Lee. Umberto Ramos, Jock, I got original pieces from them last year, and Ed McGuinness. So for today, if we get a decent crowd, I'd love to do a giveaway. Amazingly, my social media is still growing on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm very thankful for that. I've passed 800 on Instagram and 500 on Twitter, and I'd like to pay it forward, if you will, or pay that back to comic book fans. I know a lot of you probably don't know me if you're not on the West Coast, but yeah, we'll see what we can do. I'm gonna give away some sketch cards today. I know a lot of you probably don't know me if you're not on the West Coast, but yeah, we'll see what we can do. I'm gonna give away some sketch cards today. Ooh, looks like we might have some questions coming in. Oh, yes, Ryan. I started doing comics. Used to love, I still love comics, but I left the idea of drawing comics when I started college, and I only returned to it about 8 years ago. I decided comics was something I wanted to do, and I would leave my job and work at it. I decided comics was something I wanted to do, and I would leave my job and work at it. Terrence asks, how do you manage your duties as a writer artist? Do you first approach an idea visually, and or what point does text or dialogue enter your process? Well, Pablo the Gorilla is my only comic that I've done on my very own. Most of the time, I will team with a writer. So that part is managed for me. And then it's just about me, thumbnailing, getting the sequentials down, and getting that out. The way I did Pablo, if anybody picks up Pablo, it's one of the free comics that's part of Alt Free Comic Day here. Is I did a Marvel method. I had some points that I wanted to hit, and I plotted it out, went Marvel style, and then I just drew it and went back in afterwards and added the dialogue that I wanted to add to it. I actually heard Eric Larson works that way, so if I ever get the chance to meet Eric Larson, I'd love to talk to him about it. And went back in afterwards and added the dialogue that I wanted to add to it. I actually heard Eric Larson works that way, so if I ever get the chance to meet Eric Larson, I'd love to talk to him about it. Ooh, the echo lag might be my fault. Let me see. I think it's because I have two windows up for Twitch and for Facebook. All right, let me know if that's better. Sorry about that, everybody. Trying to figure it out still. Okay. So if you're a Facebook friend of mine, if you follow me on Instagram or on Twitter, you may have seen this cover already. I'm doing an Avengers vs. X-Men #1 cover. Eddie D'Angelini, who him and his wife run Heidi Ho Comics out in Santa Monica, California, told me, I guess, a few years ago, Marvel created these covers that have a semi-gloss satin-like finish, and it does not absorb liquid media very well. So ink and alcohol markers are kind of out. But the funny thing is, if you're a little bit patient and you work it and you let it dry, it actually creates a really wonderful, almost like watercolor effect. I don't know if you guys can see it, but before I set this aside, let me see if I can hold it up. Hopefully not smudge it too bad. I don't know if you can catch any of the detail there. Oh, Steven is asking, you famously quit a job that pays actual money to pursue a career in comics. How hard did you hit your head, and have the doctors given you any hope as to whether you might recover your senses? Yeah, probably not the brightest. For those who don't know my story, I used to work for the Rand Corporation, the famous or infamous, depending on how you view it, I suppose, think tank, which is originally based out of Santa Monica, California. They were created in 1948. They were known as Project Air Force. And I was actually a research supervisor at the Rand Corporation. I worked there for almost 10 years. And I had benefits and everything, and I probably was going to collect pension if I had stayed a little bit longer. But I don't know, just it got to a point. I love the work I do. The work I did, we did the social policy side. We did stuff for NIH, CDC, for example. So it wasn't any of the military stuff, and I was proud of the work that we did. The only military project I was ever involved in is we did a project for the VA, which was part of the Wounded Warrior Study. It went to look at a lot of what happened with the VA system and healthcare for our veterans, and a lot came out of that. And some of it wasn't the best light, but what it showed was that our veterans need help, and they needed to be provided that help. So I hope since that point in time that people have taken a hard look at that and what we need to do for the people that help keep us safe in this country. But yeah, I left that job because I just was drawing on everything, and it got to the point where a lot of my coworkers were like, "Hey, it doesn't look like you want to be here anymore. Seems like you want to be doing something else." And I feel like this was the calling. And I was fortunate enough that I'd been there for a while, to let my wife get settled in her career, and she was doing really well in her career. So we made the switch, and here I am drawing comics. All right, I am going to set this aside for right now. And let's try to get some sketch cards done. Steven also asked, can you give us an overview of how you made the jump and what it's been like for you? Um, I would say I'm a fairly optimistic person. I try to be positive. Um, transition obviously isn't easy. I'm not the breadwinner in the household by any stretch of the imagination, nor was I really before. But it was nice to have a stable job, a secure job, income, and benefits. And now, it's a point where every day is a fight, but I kind of relish that. And even in this down period that we're having with everything that's going on with COVID-19, it's really heartwarming to see that fans are still supporting artists and artwork, and looking for new projects and new ideas out there. And it's something that's really incredible and really special. And I feel like that's the comic book community that I love and I enjoy. Okay, let's see. Sorry, I realize that I have multiple screens in front of me, so that's on me. Thank you for bearing with me. Oops, I forgot a set of pens. I shall return shortly. Carla asked, "What influenced you to become an artist and draw for comics?" Funny enough, what led me back into drawing comics was I'd been out of comics for quite a while, and randomly decided to walk into a comic book shop one day. And as luck would have it, three artists that influenced my return to drawing and wanting to draw again lined up perfectly were Umberto Ramos, Chris Bachalo, and Scotty Young. They were on Marvel books all at the same time. Umberto was on Wolverine. Chris Bachalo, I think, was doing X-Men, just the regular title. And Scotty was on New Mutants. And for whatever reason, that just clicked in my head, and that's what I want to be doing. Russell asks, "You seem to have a nonstop motor for both creating and marketing. How do you keep the energy?" I think that's just kind of built into how I am as a person, maybe. That, and I love comics so much. So that's a part of it. All right, anybody want to do a character call out? If I know the character, I'll just draw it, and we'll see how fast I can do it. Um, if not, I'm just going to go ahead and start drawing. But as I said before, for anybody who's joining, a huge and special part of Comic Cons for me is to be able to watch artists work, do what they do, and give back. That's part of what we do. I think as creators, as writers, as comic book artists, is we have this community, and it's really important to foster that community. and I can't say enough about Free Comic Book Day. It's an event that's really special to me, especially last year since there are so many kids that came by just to get free sketches and to learn more about comics. So if we could do that for somebody, I think that's fantastic. Um, I don't see anybody throwing anything out there, so I'm just going to start. We'll do a quick head sketch, and we'll see where it takes us. So I learned this trick from Matt Brundage, which is you can build up, if you're using Copic, oh, look at that brand advertising. If you're using Copic markers, you can start out with a 0 in any color, gray, or in any color for that matter. So what I do is you can build tone starting with a 0. So if you go from 0 and you add to the 0 actually becomes like a 1, right? So every layer is an additional gradation to the percentage. So an N0 can become an N1, N2, so on and so forth. And when I found that out, it was kind of mind blowing. I was like, wow, I never have to use pencil again. And then the other trick is if you go over it with a blender. I just recently discovered blender markers because I'm really behind in the times. Is you can blast out the pigment with the blender marker. So it's almost like erasing, but basically, it's adding and subtracting pigment, right? So that's what we're going to go for. So I don't know how many people here are artists or writers or interested in one or the other. They always tell you do the 3/4. 3/4 is probably the most interesting if you're going to do a head sketch, right? The idea is I always start out with the circle, do the neck, check the spine, line up the shoulders, and that's what I go for. And that's how I do a quick setup for any character. And I used to do this at conventions, but I've since stopped and I've decided just to go ahead and not freehand so much at conventions for commissions and take some time to put out higher quality cards. But I used to do 5-minute sketch cards. And all it was is whatever I could draw in 5 minutes. But for fun, I figured we'd do that here. Anybody else have any questions while I'm doing this? Oh, challenge of Pablo and Dr. Manhattan. Okay, we can definitely get to that next. So one of the first comics I encountered as a kid, I fell in love with it. Even though I didn't understand a lot of it, there were just characters I thought were so cool. And it wasn't until I got into, I guess, my tweens and teens that I understood the comic a little bit more and where it was coming from. And that comic, of course, is X-Men. And one of my favorite characters is Colossus or Pyotr Rasputin. And you pick up a little bit of Russian, like Niet Tovarish. I always loved in comics when, especially in X Men, you see it a lot, where they would give you the foreign language and then translate that for you. And I love seeing that. I always thought that was like so cool. Like that's the thing about reading and books and comics is like it transports you into a different world and gives you a glimpse of that, right? So, quick sketch. This is done all chisel tip. Um, I have a slight background, I guess, in graffiti. For those that don't know me that well, it was something I did in college for fun. I had friends growing up. I grew up not really poor to me, at least, but I guess some people would say poor. I grew up in the projects. I've always grown up in lower income neighborhoods, whether I was in Seattle or here in LA. And I don't know. I kind of find something special in that. Barbara asks, many creators are so busy creating new content that they don't have time to consume new content, especially for inspiration. Is there any content that you make time for as a consumer, and where do you find inspiration? That is for sure true. If anybody's heard me speak recently, you will know I have about 12 unread short boxes of comics. I actually just keep buying comics totally based on cover. I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I feel like in comics you can kind of get away with that. Um, but there are stories that I do love. I just wish I had some time to sit and read them. I'll tell you for a fact what I read recently, and I was just blown away by it. How to support the Kickstarter is Charlie Stickney. If you are out there, White Ash. I loved it. It's a fantastic book. Um, if you guys don't know, if you're out in different parts of the country, there is a pair of creators, husband and wife team, and they put out an amazing comic, which I need to catch up on in the last two issues, I believe. And it's called Out of Order. It's Mike On and his wife Soul. They are super nice. I love them to death. They are just great creators. And that's actually one of the comics I've kept up on. Dustin Wynn, who is an amazing friend, he did the variant cover for Pablo the Gorilla. Shout out to him on Descender and Ascender. I'm a little behind. I'm in the last third of Descender. I need to catch up on Ascender. That's another series. I love Saga. I was actually on a podcast recently with Andy Salazar, and we were talking about that. So that's another series I really enjoy. I wish I just had more time to sit and do it, especially as of late, as I think I'm on 5 comic projects all at the same time. So wish me luck, guys. We'll see how it goes. Dave asks, what was the very first comic you remember reading and or owning, and how did it or has it affected your career? I've told this story a few times, and I love telling it. When I was a kid, I was maybe 5 or 6. We used to live in Seattle, and my mom, she was studying, I think, accounting and computer language, which is funny because she didn't pursue that back in the day. She would go to the library to study, and she would drop me off in the kids section, and that was where I first discovered comics. So my very first comics that I picked up and read through, I remember reading John Byrne, I think was doing Man of Steel or Superman at that point, and Christopher Reeve looked like that Superman. So I equated those two things, or rather, I conflated those two things, I guess. But he also had a run on X-Men, and I remember those books were just like completely red, and the covers were falling off. So that was one of them. So John Byrne's X-Men run. there was Walt Simonson Thor, and I'd never seen art like Walt Simonson's artwork before, and that blew my mind. Um, and the other things I really got into was they had a compendium of Batman, and it was the old Bob Kane, Bill Finger Batmans, and I read through that obviously because I love Batman. I grew up watching the syndicated like weekend reruns of Batman '66, and Annie was really big at the time, and they had the entire collection of Orphan Annie. Um, so that was another thing that really made a huge impression on me. In terms of the first comic I ever bought, I didn't really buy comics until we had moved to LA, and I kind of had an allowance from doing stuff. And I remember one of the first, some of the first comics I bought were um, Art Adams had done. I think it was an Excalibur, and it was collected into like a trade or like a mega issue of some sort, and it was like Baby X-Men, and I thought that was amazing. So I've always been an Art Adams fan. Um, when Batman the movie came out, I also bought that. They had like a soft cover trade kind of a book for that, and that was pretty influential on me. I spent a lot of time in junior high drawing Jack Nicholson's Joker on brown paper bag book covers that I would make. I don't know if you guys remember making book covers for your school books. That was pretty big for me. And of course, I was a '90s kid. I was sort of that cross section of late '80s and '90s. So I grew up influenced by a lot of the '90s guys that were the Image founders. Sorry for the squeaky noises. So for anybody watching out there, as I said before, these are alcohol markers. These actually got off Wish. They're the Shenyun knockoffs. I think they're called Chen Yun Touchy Bool. I don't even know, but they work. They're actually pretty amazing. I'm still able to do gradation and blending with them, so that's fantastic. And they still look sharp. But man, it is fumey. And there you are. I think that was a relatively fast Colossus. So for these giveaways, I would love it if you could, if I call you out and you're the winner, do me a favor, just send me a private message with your address, and I'll just send them out to you. All right, so this one, I believe should go to the person who hopped on first, which I believe is Ryan Claytor. I hope I pronounced your name last name correctly, Ryan. Is it Claytor or Claytor? Anyways, let me know. And if you love Colossus, it's yours. Set that aside. All right, we're gonna do a special one. It looks like for Terrence. Let's do Pablo mashed up with Dr. Manhattan. All right. I hope I do this correctly. I'm trying to remember what Dr. Manhattan looks like, aside from being blue and naked. And I'm thinking the logo in his head is, if I remember correctly, it is an atom, a circular atom surrounded by like 2 or 3 rings with a little dot on the side. Hope I got that right. Anybody out there who knows better than I do, please correct me. I do not mind being corrected. Sometimes my memory will fail me, and I'll just draw things on the wrong side too. A little Salvador Dali-ish reference. Persistence of memory, I suppose. And for everybody joining, thank you very much for stopping by and for asking questions. I appreciate that. David, how are you doing? David asked, how long do you envision Pablo going on for? Do you have any other genres you want to work on in the interim, or is it full steam ahead with more Pablo adventures? So I'm working on Pablo number two, and to me, it's a limited series. When I started the first one, I was not, I didn't know what would happen with it, or how it would even be received. I just really believed in the project. I thought it was great, and I thought it was a lot of fun, and I took it from almost like a classic, not classic, but an old school comic book art mentality of trying to tell the story first. So I drew it in a way I thought the sequentials would work for just, like a kid to be able to look at it and to be able to tell what was happening without necessarily having to read all of the words or understand them. Because I feel like that was part of comics for me growing up, was to be able to see the sequentials and understand them that way. And we all know, that's sort of the Will Eisner method. Um, so that was my goal, and I was hoping that people would enjoy it, and that would be a lot of fun for people. And that's the feedback I've gotten so far. So what was, I think it's that same approach that you hear about with Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird with Ninja Turtles. Like, we're just going to do this first one, see how it goes, and then let's just keep doing it for as long as we can. And I think that's what I want to do with Pablo, if possible. But I am looking only to do 3 to 4 issue arc, depending on how the story plays out. So when I kickstart that, that's the goal that would be in mind. So I still have to. I'm in the middle of writing the second one and thumbnailing at the same time. Sorry about that. Um, and yeah, we'll see where that takes us. In terms of other projects, I just finished a while back an anthology submission that's part of Russell's book, Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, The Terrible Twos. I'm working with my friend Mike Corpy, who's an amazing writer, and we actually have a few story submissions out there. We're doing one right now for the Sketchy Bug group, which is based out of the Comic Bug in Manhattan Beach, California. I just finished that a little while ago. DJ Kirkbride is involved in that, Brandon Easton, Don Walker, Felipe Smith, who obviously is really well known for having done the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, Sable Nance, a ton of other great people. Luis Bermudez and his, or Luis Bermudez and his brother are also on that project, Don Schmidt. And that one is an apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic storybook or inspired storybook. So we'll see how that anthology goes. But yeah, I would love to flex my muscles on anything. I don't care. To me, it's just about being able to draw comics and tell stories. And for as long as I can do that, I don't think I care what the genre is. I'd love to just try to push myself and try to tell stories that way. But first love is probably superheroes. Not gonna lie. All right, let's figure out what color matches up best with Dr. Manhattan. Please bear with me while I search for these colors. My bag of markers is really big. And again, thank you so much for joining me. This is my first time doing a live stream on Facebook. I'm still not great at live streaming on Twitch either, but I think I'm borrowing my wife's setup, and it looks pretty cool. Marker's running dry. feel like if you're doing something that involves Dr. Manhattan and the Watchmen, you'd be remiss not to include the Red Planet. David literally just chimed in. Did I fall asleep? It may be argued that I'm always asleep, actually, or that never truly awake. What is the line? Sleep perchance to dream. And there is my version of a quick Dr. Manhattan style Pablo. And that one, Terrence, if you would like it, just send me a message and I'll send that out to you. And it looks like I have 9 minutes to go. Would anybody like to ask any other questions? I don't know if there are any budding artists out there. I see a message from Tony Sebastian Ukpo. Tony, how are you? I hope you and yours are well and safe. Hello, Philip. How are you doing? Thank you for joining. Terrence sent me a message saying thank you for joining, and you're very welcome. Be happy to send that out to you. Of course, the other X-Men character I always grew up loving was Storm with the mohawk, specifically. And there's just something about Storm with the mohawk that makes me happy. That I grew up in this period where I saw influence of punk rock still, and hip hop was just beginning. I remember the first time hearing Run DMC or the Beastie Boys, and that was just mind blowing to me. Never heard anything like it, and loved it since. looks like my time is coming to an end. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me in the sketch session. And we'll do this one last card to our lucky audience member out there. A quick, excuse me, tone sketch of Aurora Monroe. Let's see if I can face this to the camera properly. There you go. And let's see who we have on deck here. If anybody wants to leave the last question. Anyone still watching out there? It's yours. So just send me a DM and I'll send that out to you. Thank you once again, everybody who came by and asked questions. I appreciate it. Thank you.